and we're about to get underway. So last year's Crescent City Cup, right in the midst of that original pandemic wave, and it took place online. This year, we are back in person. You see the players are masked, a lot of other safety protocols going into this event, and we've got a really, really good number of players still in attendance, ready to play. So you can see Walker. It's fair to say in this situation that Walker is a pretty significant underdog against Dave Wiegand, but he's got a great rack to start with here, including that first blank, which you have to know he's happy to see on that rack here.
Yeah, I suspect he will probably find a bingo or use all of his tiles and get that 50-point bonus. And it's not to say, I mean, like, he certainly beat Dave many times before. These two have played, I don't know, billion games. No, probably, like, I would imagine close to 100, though, at this point.
Yeah, and it is really a tale of two racks here. As you can see, Dave has not only no vowels, but also 3 sets of duplicated consonants. So you're going to see Walker bingoing in a hurry. And when I say that Walker is an underdog in this game, I don't mean that to demean Walker, who is an excellent expert level player. That merely is to praise Dave Wiegand as truly one of the best players in North America. And I feel like, Conrad, that Dave, oh, it looks like we're doing some announcements maybe. So we'll just continue to praise Dave while those announcements go over to the players. Yeah. But Dave, I feel like, is one of the few players in the entire world of Scrabble who is capable of making plays that almost nobody else is. His word knowledge is unbelievable. You've just, Conrad, I feel like we must each have so many stories of plays that Dave has made, not just finding crazy words, but even just cool endgame sequences and strategic ideas. He really is one of the best players in the world.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, I might take some fire from you from this, but I would say, honestly, at this moment in time, probably the top player in North America.
I don't object to that one bit. Dave has proven it over the course of decades that he really does stake a pretty solid claim to be the top player in the country. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him play. And there are a number of other elite players that we're going to be watching who are present at this event. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Implied Ampersand says, how many games today? So the schedule, it's definitely worth noting. We're going to play 8 games today, 8 games tomorrow on Sunday, and the final 4 games will be on Monday, the dramatic conclusion to the event. So really, really excited to see how this event unfolds. And watch some of the truly best Scrabble players in the world compete. So while we have a break in play, I just want to emphasize, as I said earlier, this event does represent kind of a first in a number of important ways. And this event is actually going to be, it is sponsored by Scrabble Go and Scrabble Web to the tune of $5,000 that are going into tournament expenses, live streaming equipment, and the prize pools for the players. So that is a really cool thing. I just want to give a shout out to Scrabble Go for helping make this event even better. The Crescent City Cup, Conrad, I would say maybe the most prestigious Scrabble tournament outside of the national championship every year. Would you say that's fair to say in general?
It's certainly one of the top couple, but I'm a little biased, having directed this tournament myself before and loving everyone who's a part of the team. But I'd say consistently year after year gets one of the strongest fields, and is certainly one that people absolutely look forward to above all else. So,
all right. Play is resuming, and it looks like we are going to see Scooted go down with that blank as an E. And that's going to be a great start for Walker, as he is on the board first, and Dave is almost certain to exchange here with this rack. again, it's bad enough that he has all 7 consonants, but the fact that they're all 1-point tiles and 3 sets of duplicates means that Dave is a lock to exchange here, Conrad. I cannot imagine that he puts a play on the board here.
No, I don't think he's gonna make a play. You know, there could have been some interesting mind games here where Walker decided not to play his bingo before, right as they were saying the announcements. He could have thrown that down there to get inside Dave's head a little bit, you know. But at the same time, he knew that Dave was going to get a lot more information, so maybe this was the right thing to do. And unsurprisingly, you know, Dave is trading tiles, so.
Yep, away go a lot of those consonants back into the bag. And almost immediately in response, Walker puts down WUD. This is a word that if you are not as familiar with tournament Scrabble, you're going to see a word like this, WUD, and say, what is that? But Scrabble players are going to know this word really, really intimately because it contains that WU combination, which is such a difficult, there's so few words that contain that combination. The words that do have it are very, very frequently seen on a Scrabble board. So that looks like a good play to me by Walker. He played it really, really fast. I think he's understanding that he had 2 U's and a W on his rack. Very likely that WUD is a good play, and I'm liking that play, Conrad.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you can add a U onto WUD. I mean, certainly as if that is as obvious. But Voodoo, you know, I guess he knew pretty quickly it didn't play short of Voodoo's for not many points. But, you know, he might have considered for a moment shedding the other U. But, yeah.
Well, wait, I think UD, are you saying?
No, Voodoo's to the S and scooted for a far fewer points.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, he should have played UD as in Usted, which is not in this dictionary.
You got it. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Obviously, every U that you keep on your rack hurts your chances of getting a bingo down. The U is definitely the weakest bingo vowel of all of the 5 vowels. And we can see that Dave has actually played quoth now, blocking that S of scooted, which I'm sure Dave doesn't want to do. But again, it's not a situation where he has to panic. He's only down by 60 or so points. And for a player like Dave, that is going to be a deficit that he can come back from for sure over the course of a game. RWE says in chat, I've never seen live Scrabble before. This is great. Welcome. Happy to have you. Hoping that that many more people like that are stopping by the channel and enjoying live Scrabble between truly some of the best players in the country, which is what we're really excited about here. So it is back over to Walker. He has decent scoring tiles, but maybe 1 too many vowels. This is what Conrad was alluding to, that U. This is where you might score a couple fewer points on your previous turn, but you might thank yourself on your next turn for getting that U off of the rack, but he still has some decent options here. He looks like he's lined up just UH on his rack. Boy, that would be very risky if he plays that under the S of scooted, Conrad.
Yeah, I hope he's not going to do that. That seems very ill-advised. That would be a little too offensive for my taste, I think. Oh, wow. He's got the lead. I don't know why he wants to make such a big opening, but
so he plays here. So he plays and the reason that Conrad and I are reacting so much to this is that UH takes a number of hooks in front that will give access to the triple word lane, not just the triple word score. Any play that ends in a D, right? A bingo with ED is going to play with duh if the other both H's have been played, but there are a couple other, like the P in Collins is a hook to UH. Maybe it's just a scary play to make, I think. And Dave is going to have to interpret this as, boy, would he possibly do this play without one of those letters in reserve? And the answer is yes. And I think Dave, ironically, might be. Sorry, let me update Walker's score. I think Dave actually is one of the few players who is aggressive enough as a player to not really worry. And Dave may just play as he normally would. It looks like he's setting up Girl, though, to potentially play underneath there. That might be a pretty good play no matter what his strategic objective for the board here, though.
I think that's the idea, right? Is you're now turning it into much more of exclusively a bingo lane, something ending in a D. Dave is behind, so if even though Walker's representing having something like a D on his rack, this makes it more likely that if Dave's able to pick one up quickly, he's going to be able to use it as a bingo. But it's unlikely to get blocked unless Walker does have one of those tiles.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That restricting the possibilities of words that can hook UH may be a great way to preserve Dave's own chances of hitting that spot. But if I am in Walker's shoes, it's actually a very good point by Bax West in the chat that it's scary, but Walker may be correct to play for high volatility, just given the circumstances, knowing that you're playing potentially certainly the top seed in this event. As Conrad said, I think odds-on favorite to be the best player in North America and one of the best players in the world in Dave Wiegand. Maybe you want to get a little crazy and make a spot like that. Is that you disagree?
No,
okay.
No, it's way too much. I mean, he's already up. He was up 100 to like 20. Like, yeah, you want to play for high volatility, but if you already have a big lead, you don't need to like play suicidally open. There's a limit to the logic of playing for super high volatility.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you want to give yourself the opportunities, but once you have gotten ahead and high enough, you don't want to give your opponent too many chances to get back just the same.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So while in theory makes sense, this is a little too much, I would say.
Yeah, so the idea maybe that Walker should give himself a little more credit than he is. So he plays Ow. He plays Ow underneath Girl. Again, Walker has some good bingo tiles. You can see a lot of the tiles left on his rack, ETIA, and then maybe to a slightly lesser extent, the M are very good bingo tiles. And it is worth noting that if you're watching along and from your own Scrabble experience, maybe it's very rare to get a 7-letter or 8-letter bingo down using all of your tiles. For these players, it is very, very much expected over the course of a game that you're going to get at least a couple plays like that. These guys know a lot of 7 and 8-letter words. In Dave Wiegand's case, he knows a lot of 9, 10, 11, 12-letter words as well, even though they very, very rarely are seen played on a Scrabble board. So,
but chances are,
go down here.
Chances are, if someone is playing one of those ridiculously large words, it's probably him.
Yeah, I definitely think that if we get enough Dave Wiegand games over the course of this event, we're very likely to see something very special be played. So Fib is not one of those incredible long word plays for Dave, but I think that was absolutely the right play for Dave there. On his previous rack, he had the B, the F, and the P, all higher scoring tiles. Those tiles don't really work very well together in longer words, and Dave is trying to get his rack closer to a bingo, which you can see from Dave's rack. He's got 2 S's, an E, and the P. The 3 I's are what's getting in his way right now. So, and it's worth noting, still neither player has drawn. Well, I guess Dave has the P for P-U-H, but I don't think that's going to be the play here. So I think this is going to be very interesting. It's almost impossible to block that UH spot on the board without a hook to it. So unless either player draws that D, how do you even block that spot? It's
Oh,
seemingly
I mean,
impossible.
yeah, it's going to be by, drawing a different tile and playing a 2 or 3 tile play, I suspect.
Yeah.
But Walker, based on his recent plays, he's kind of, I think his way of going for this volatility, as we were talking about, was to make shorter plays and try to go for a bingo. But as he's sort of showing here, it's going to get a little harder.
So he plays mate. It looks like he hasn't committed his clock, and there you see the clock press there. So that is an interesting play. He has Atom in the same spot, right, making Lobo. So I feel like that's a little bit of a slight imprecision there. I'm not going to say that's like a huge mistake. If you're watching and saying, "Wow, that was a really nice play with all those overlaps," you're right. That was a really cool play that Walker just made. But he had a chance to play Atom instead, forming Lobo instead of Lobe. And the E is often such a good tile to keep to give yourself flexibility. It has way more bingos contain an E than an O. So that's one of these tiny little nuances between those two plays. Mate and Atom both score 30. But that's a play that can have really big reverberations going forward. But Walker has drawn another E to sort of help him along there.
Yeah. Also worth noting, you can put an A in front of the word mate. You could not put anything in that triple lane in front of Atom because you wouldn't actually be as close. So no one has an A right now, but.
Great point. Yeah. So amate. And we can get the definition bot up so that we can show people some words in the chat. I will get that set up momentarily. But amate plays, as Conrad said, would score very huge to the triple with, if you had JA, ZA, something like that, you could easily see a pretty massive score to the triple. So now there's, if I'm Dave here, I'm sitting here, I'm losing by fewer points now as Dave plays SIP. He really is going for, actually, that's not terrifically volatile because this is kind of a classic Twitch word. I just want to note that FAP, all you Twitch heads out there, this is actually an archaic word. It's not what you think it is. It doesn't take an S yet, anyway. So it might look like Dave is setting himself up for a really, really big play to the triple with his second S, but that's actually not the case. So we will just have to see how the rest of the game transpires. Dave does have that Z, though. So I Spy Scrabble says the graphics are great, so easy to follow along. Thank you very much for the kind words. All the credit for that does go to our producer, Christian, behind the scenes. So let me just test the bot.
Yeah, one, as we'll see on Dave's side, he's sitting on an 8-letter word for next turn. But in the meantime, this board is now so closed that what if you're Walker, right, you're trying to keep the board closed, but right now there's not too much to be done to actually close the board.
Yeah, this is where this is like several turns ahead now, where you can see that the play of UH there, which maybe he did make that play with the intent of creating more threats, even though he was ahead. Now he's got this lead, but the board is going to be very difficult for him to manage as he plays Zhu here. Now, let me just test and see if the define bot is working. I think this is like a Shetland. This is like a string instrument, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Okay.
It's a viol.
A viol. Yes.
Shetland
exactly.
one. Yeah.
So for any viewers, we'll see if maybe this is one of those good problems. If we get a ton of viewers, maybe we'll have to disable this feature, but any viewer should feel, if you see a word on the board, and there will be many archaic words here that look slightly unfamiliar. If you see a word like that, feel free to type in !define in the chat, and that will give you as best a guess of the definition as we have. So As Conrad pointed out, as Conrad pointed out, quicker than I did, I actually didn't see this. Dave has a bingo of diarizes, and Dave is going to spot pretty much every bingo that he sees in these games. It will be very rare to see. Sorry, John Domino. I think that previous request was too quick with what you had. There we go. So there's the amate definition there. So all right. So now you can see after that scary start for Dave where he was down quite a bit, you can see Walker is now saying to himself, oh man, somehow I'm trailing in this game. Fortunately for Walker, he should have plenty of options here to score pretty well. He does have a Y. That's a nice high-scoring letter. There's a wide open S on the triple lane. I wonder what he's thinking of. He might be actually going for Zooey here, Conrad.
I would think. I mean, that seems like the pretty nice way to get rid of a bunch of vowels and keep some good ones for next turn.
Yeah,
he's not losing really. He's still pretty much even.
I agree. So this is a really interesting point, right? Because if you're saying to yourself, man, how could you possibly not block that S of diarizes in the triple lane, right? Well, of course, Walker wants to block that. But he's not going to be able to block that S of diarizes in a way that scores very well or that gets all of those vowels off of his rack. He has so many vowels that even though your objective looking at the board is to try to block that S, Walker's rack is telling him something different. He has too many tiles. Not only that, the game situation is such that if he plays Zooey, he goes up by 30. What if he draws a D, right? If he draws a D, he might have his option of playing to the S of diarizes or playing something to the triple with duh. So this is, I think this play is warranted here, even though it does seem really scary to just leave that S wide open on the lower part of the board. I think I like his choice here.
Yeah, and I think one thing with leaving an S wide open is like, it's in a not as volatile spot. Like Dave isn't going to play a 7-letter word or an 8-letter word ending in that S. I mean, a 5-tile play obviously could hurt, but like there won't be any bingos. It's unlikely to be a triple, which is a play that hits 2 triple word scores at once. So it's not as scary as it could be, but it's still pretty scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a threat, but yeah, having an S, I think the worst place for an S to be is where the S can be more of the end of a word, of a long word. And you can see because of the FAP and MI area of the board blocking, that's not going to be possible. So we'll see. Yeah, you can see, as John Domino points out, the X has been drawn. So Zooey, sort of an inadvertent setup for the X. You can see right under that first O of Zooey is a triple letter score where that X could slot in for an enormous amount. So Dave, I think Dave actually has some interesting ideas here. So Conrad, he can either play UE through the E, or he can play YU parallel to diarizes. And those plays are very different because one of them blocks the X pretty effectively and the other just pumps the score up even more.
Yeah. I mean, I am much more partial to YU. I would probably give slight thought to one of the longer plays, but only long enough to give it thought and then realize that it's probably not worth it. Yeah. The problem with keeping a really good lead here is that it's not really a great board for bingoing yet. So
yeah, Dave's gonna need to draw with these letters. This rack would turn from not likely to bingo anywhere to very likely to bingo if he was able to get a D on his rack for duh. But without that D, you can see actually Walker has drawn the third D out of the bag. So there's only one more to go. And just if anyone's curious, we will have the unseen tiles up closer to the end of the game. Just if you're saying, well, how can I know what tiles are left? That information will be coming towards the latter half of each game. So a suggestion in the chat, a very creative suggestion of if Dave plays the invalid word UI. Oh, look at this. Okay. So Dave goes a little bit longer. And you know what, Conrad? I think he is absolutely thinking along your lines here.
Yeah. And to give a little context, Dave and I live like 6 blocks from each other, and we play every week. So I think our play styles lately over the last year and a half have been rubbing off a bit, where I tend to like more of a play like this: score more points, keep more control over the board, and then Dave liking the offensive plays, going for more bingos. But like,
yeah, I totally think that he is correctly evaluating what you just said. The board is just not very good for getting those bingos down. So playing short and keeping a nice lead like enter, that would normally be advisable. But in this particular situation, not so much.
Oh no, but Will, look what happened. He only played his X. He didn't put the D in front of it, and now Dave is gonna get to bingo. He's gonna get alum root instead of.
Oh man. So, but the thing about that though is I think Walker was probably right not to play that D, just because the duh hook is so valuable, right?
Yeah,
like normally I would for sure. So what we're saying, this is an incredible swing, everybody. What we're saying here is that you could have, instead of just playing X, you could have played Dex or even Apex. That's an interesting choice. I think
Apex.
Right yeah, maybe Apex is the play instead of just X. Obviously, these are really splitting hairs between those types of plays. Apex would have scored an extra 10 points, but this is a huge swing. I'm actually a little surprised, though, that Dave has not played this bingo yet. I don't think there's a chance he misses this. Do you, Conrad? This would be a stunner if he did.
I'd be surprised if he missed it, but it's like once you see it, it's clearly the best spot, and he had a chance to look through that O before the X came down. So it's possible he hasn't found it yet.
So for the record, Dave, from his 7 tiles, he has a play through the O, forming the obscure 3-letter word EXO. He can play alum root for 80 points here. That would be, by any standard, an excellent play. I'm a little concerned that he hasn't played it yet. I mean, this is Dave Wiegand we're talking about, so I fully expect eventually it's going to come down. The extra crazy thing about this is you can see from Walker's rack, he has Paradise lined up to go down through the E of Zooey. So this is a huge swing. Dave definitely needs not to miss this EXO hook here through alum root. This is the sort of play where I feel like for a player like Dave, he finds this like 99 times out of 100, but maybe 1 time out of 100, the EXO hook kind of trips him up potentially. And if this is that 1 time out of 100 where he doesn't spot this, it's going to be a huge swing in favor of Walker here.
And like, it's also fair to say, like, this is what Dave's 3rd tournament back since, all of the lockdown and everything.
Great point. Yeah, that's true.
And, again, he woke up at 3:30 yesterday. This is round 1. We were maybe out till after 1 a.m. last night, playing word games, actually. So, there's always first round jitters, first round rustiness, whatever it is. So, certainly I could speak for myself when I say, like, I am more likely to make some ridiculous mistake in the first round. And then,
there it is.
Wow.
Amazing. That is very surprising. This is not something that you will see from Dave very often at all. He is renowned for his ability to find longer words. However, he has made, if you're going to miss a bingo, it's good to make a 36-point play that happens to also block your opponent's massive bingo that played. Oh, and it looks like we're going to see a challenge here. So this will be a good time to quickly go over the challenge rules. Yeah. And we may actually have a cool camera angle to share with you from the challenge computer, depending on if we can get there in time. So basically how this works is, let's see. Do we have I think the challenge may have been finished. So anyway, we do have this shot of the challenge computer, but I think they finished up their challenge before we could get to it. So basically the rules here are, if you challenge a word, and the word ends up being valid, which malor, that is actually an archaic variation of malord. What happens is Dave will get an extra 5 points on his score. So malor is the play. He gets an extra 5 points. That brings him to 264, in fact. So we're basically dead even between the two players now. Wow, crazy, Conrad.
Yeah, and so one thing, Dave's actually my roommate at this tournament. I'm a few blocks away in our hotel room. So obviously we don't want players to hear either of us, though I don't think they could hear Will from a different state. That said, one of the last things Dave said to me before heading over to go play was that he hopes that if he makes it onto board 1, which is what this is, that we don't tell him how much he's sucking.
Well,
and I'm like, Dave, I don't think you have to worry. And maybe I won't tell him to watch midway through this game.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, it's just one of those mistakes that I feel like I could make mistakes like this pretty often, where because EX is in that spot, I wouldn't even think of whether I have a bingo through the O, right? I would have to get kind of lucky to say to myself, oh man, too bad that I would have had a bingo through that O. Oh, wow, it still plays, right? Like that's sort of how I would get there. And if you don't have that sort of lucky epiphany, it might not happen. So it looks like Walker is going to play Pa and Poo and R there. So that's an interesting choice. He has 2 A's. He's getting rid of one of those. What do you think of this, Conrad? It seems like reasonable aggression to me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like it fits with his play style thus far. He is clearly trying to open stuff up. He's really trying to go for another bingo. Now that the game is closer, the volatility that he's offering feels pretty warranted. So yeah, I see what he's doing. Again, he's keeping that D for the top left, otherwise, or for the middle left. Otherwise, yeah, maybe you throw on a D here. You think we're gonna finally see an A in front of mate here? I wasn't sure if Walker knew the word, but
oh yeah,
Dave certainly knows it.
Dave will know it. Yeah, I mean, would we expect something like boast to go down in that spot? That could certainly be a reasonable choice for him. There's also, I just want to point out, Quoth on the board does take an A hook for Quotha. That would be, there are some interesting choices for him in that spot. Not sure if he will think to play there. Certainly the A8 hook would score very, very nicely for Dave in this situation. So there are a couple different plays. Boast forming A8 in the lower left, but also bad through the DE, making Quotha could be a really nice option for him. I wonder what else he's thinking of here.
Well, that seems like it's got to be the best play, right? I saw that spot earlier, but not recently. I was thinking like, oh, maybe get an 8-letter word down to the DE for a bunch of points.
Sure, yeah. And something ending in ADE, not that there's that many words like that, would be a devastating play, scoring play there. But we'll see. Dave, it is definitely within Dave's vision and ability to spot plays like that. But if not, Boast is still, it's in the same striking distance. I think for Dave, with the standards that he has as a player, I think he will expect that he would see all bad here. And I'll just define that in the chat so you see what I'm talking about. This word, playing with quotha, would be
what a word.
I know, another pretty cool word. Again, you will be seeing a lot of these archaic words, even though quotha is in the slightly less archaic North American dictionary. So if you're watching along and you're seeing some words that you've never seen before, a lot of the best players in the country are more used to the international lexicon. Oh, look at this. Okay, so he plays boutade, a slight variation. Do you think this is intentional, or maybe he just overlooked? So he saw the spot, right? He sees the spot.
I mean, he must have overlooked it, because it's like, I don't think Dave would think that is a better play.
Yeah, he could.
It's a missable play. It's not like,
for sure. The thing is, though, he did the lion's share of the work to finding it. He saw the spot. He just missed the correct word to play there. So Dave's rack, to his AA, he draws 3 eyes again. So if ever there was going to be an upset between these two players, Dave's draws and obviously his miss of alum root has opened the door to Walker to steal this game away. Walker is sitting on really good letters. He's got a D for duh. He's got an S that can play with the hook to pa on the lower right of the board. And now there are a few open letters of boutade to bingo through. So all of a sudden, there are slightly more options available to Walker than there were previously. And let's just see. I think in his shoes, I would definitely consider playing something with duh here. I would consider playing kid and keeping the beautiful ARST leave. If ARST, those 4 letters, if he's able to pick an E, his odds of bingoing are really high. Oh, he plays off his A as well. So we are going to do our best to keep you guys. All right, so that is the play. He officially has played both of his vowels here. So I'm going to do my best at this point in the game to keep the tracking updated. Stand by, and I will get you what Dave is looking at. I think we're at basically the 3/4 point through the game. There's 25 tiles unseen to Dave, and I've just put them up now. So these are the tiles that Dave's looking at.
So while it was definitely better that, to keep the A here, from Dave's perspective, one play that stands out immediately is to play Bivia from the B, which would have opened a huge K spot. And obviously there are other letters that normally go there. But if you look at the tile pool, if you were to play Bivia in that top right, really only the F is the only tile that's that scary.
True. Yeah. All the high scoring tiles are out pretty much. So this is, if ever there was a time, and you can see he has that set up. It's also worth noting that he could play Vasa and Amate for a humongous score on the lower left, but it would keep all 3 of his eyes and basically doom him on the next turn without an incredible draw. So just looking, and all right, he's going to go ahead and do it. I mean, that's 40. That is 40 points, Conrad. But man, IIIN.
Yeah, and now we'll see if I feel pretty. It seems pretty likely that Walker will be able to find the bingo here. But
sorry, let me get Walker's score, Dave's score. Okay, so the score now.
Oh my! Look at Dave has 4 eyes now.
Dave drew another eye, but he did draw the blank. But
draw the blank.
Yeah, this is gonna be tough for Dave now. So a bingo for Walker is going to deliver him a pretty big lead. Dave is not completely out of it yet. There are still just enough tiles that maybe he can come up with something, but 4 eyes is really not what he wants to see here. Let me get this.
I mean, in this case, if you're Dave down this much, you almost want to try to play through it, do something crazy, I don't know, India, say, you keep 2 eyes, but open up
True.
another big bingo lane or something like.
That might
Dave,
be his only chance here. So Conrad is suggesting that maybe Dave make a play through the D of Lustard of India, and that would still leave him 2 eyes on the rack, but I blank.
I
If you
mean,
look at the
to that
unseen
pool.
tiles, yeah, look
Oh,
at the unseen
perfect.
tiles. You can see only 4 vowels. The rest of those 11 tiles unseen to Dave are all consonants. So there is a good chance that Dave will draw a very consonant heavy set of 4 tiles if he plays India here. And that could leave Walker in a little bit of a bind, except for the fact that Walker has somehow been able to thread the needle and
Yeah.
draw a valid 7-letter word that is going to play if he knows it and sees it. If Dave plays India, there will be a
Yeah.
perfect place for Walker to play Narseen on the triple, and we will see an upset in round 1 if that happens.
Yeah. It's worth noting here, just as a sort of a teaching moment, that you might think it's weird to keep I blank and like play off your consonant, but unseen to Dave are still 4 more N's.
Yeah,
So the
true.
odds of him drawing an N, I won't do the probability on stream for everyone, but it's pretty high. Obviously, we know Walker drew 2 of them, but still, if you were to do that math, chances are Dave can make a pretty safe assumption that like he's likely to have an N on his next rack anyway.
Yeah. It's a great point. So not only are there many reasons for Dave to use up his eyes, using that N would be a great benefit of playing India here as well. I think also he has to realize that I think Dave's winning pathway here is to play India and then expect that Walker will block the triple lane and try to draw a bingo through the E of Lustard or potentially through the B of Bouchard. Those are the ways that Dave can snatch this game away. It's also worth noting that I don't think Walker has yet spelled out the 7-letter word that he has on the rack. Could he possibly miss that word that he has, Narseen?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see. This is tough for Dave. You can see his clock whittling down a little bit. I don't think he wants to let his clock get too much lower than this. Conrad, would you say that this is the sort of game where maybe this is the turn that you would spend time on, or would you try to play India as soon as you sort of evaluate that that's the best play for you here?
I mean, I would definitely spend a little bit of time because this is the turn where you really need to make sure that your tracking is correct, the score is correct, all those things. I did want to call out for a sec, Cyber 74's
Yeah, what a
comments.
comment! What a comment!
Will, did you study Latin? Am I making that up? Or
I did. Yeah, I did study Latin in
yeah,
high school and college.
yeah. So this is kind of like in general like a Romance language thing, right? That just having all these vowels for all the verb conjugations are like,
It's
sure, I
not,
have 3
yeah.
eyes. Who cares?
Yeah, it's not fatal to your bingo
Yeah,
chances. Yeah,
yeah,
that's true. But in this particular language, in English, the multiple eyes is definitely not good for your bingo chances. So,
yeah.
all right. So, this is an important inflection point to the
Oh,
game. Dave has not really
oh
drawn well
no.
enough anyway. I don't think it really matters, but
I
the
can eat my
FV
words.
draw, yeah, the FV draw is not what Dave wants to see to get a bingo down. Those high scoring consonants, the reason that they score so many points is that they don't appear in as many words, especially long words. So, boy, it doesn't look like Walker is seeing his bingo here, though.
Yeah, I mean that's a
Oh, never mind. He
oh.
tricked us, I think. Oh no. Oh,
Is he
okay.
playing Naker?
He
Yeah.
plays Naker. Yeah, so that's gonna empty the bag actually.
Oh,
So
that's risky, right? I mean, does he
it's
does he
it's
know that
risky.
unseen?
It is very risky. Yeah, so well wait a second. Yeah, he plays Narseen or he plays Naker from a rack of Narseen, emptying the bag. And that is exactly the sort of break that Dave needed, except he did not draw well enough with that FV combination. So Walker is going to go up by quite a bit here, well more than enough to withstand anything but a bingo, and Dave does not have one.
And of course,
Wow.
there are all the tiles that Dave needed. See right there, ENN and an L.
Yeah,
Everything
so
that
let
Dave
me
needed, he
update
left in the bag.
this. Pretty much, yeah. The beautiful tiles, which I'll have in a second, are, yeah, you can see now. Whoops.
And so that's the thing, while Will is setting this up is, Scrabble ultimately it's a game of both skill and luck, and this is one of those moments where, you're trying to make your own luck, set yourself best up for success. Dave's play of India probably did that, but sometimes, things don't perfectly pan out. If he had drawn what Walker drew, we're saying something different right now, and that's, kind of how the game works is over time. Dave is gonna, find a lot of really good plays and make more opportunities, and sometimes he doesn't get them. Does that kind of jibe with how you think about this, Will?
Yeah, I do think that when Dave looks back at this game, he's not going to care that much that he drew FV. He's going to care about alum root, right?
Yeah,
like
sure.
that's what he's going to look at. He's going to see this was the was there a why is Dave's clock on? Oh, right, because he's still right. Sorry, I understand because he's thinking about what to do. But yeah, I think for somebody like Dave, and the way I try my best to think about Scrabble is think about what you can control, the stuff you can't control, what you draw out of the bag, the luck of it. That's all going to even out over time if you are doing as good a job as you can controlling the things you can control, finding the bingos that are available to you to play, finding the scoring plays that are available, blocking your opponent's plays effectively, doing a good job of managing, of balancing your needs of improving your rack versus managing the board, all of that stuff. So Dave plays, all right, how do we pronounce this, everyone? Let's get a raging debate going.
GIF.
Conrad says
hard
GIF.
G. Hard G.
Yeah, are there any peanut butter heads out there that say GIF instead?
Yeah. That's spelled with a J. It is a peanut butter.
Yes. All right. So GIF is the play for Dave, and it's back over to Walker. And I think so. Basically, the unseen tiles now that's no longer necessary, just because both players, if their bookkeeping is correct, and this is something that's important if you're a newer player coming, and this is your first Scrabble experience, watching a stream of Scrabble, it's important to note that the players are actually keeping track of the letters that are played. So if everybody's bookkeeping is correct, both players will know what their opponents have at this stage of the game. You can see Walker has a clipboard right underneath his elbow. Dave has a little score sheet off to his right. So they are keeping track of what tiles their opponents have, and that helps you sort of calculate more of like a chess player in a chess sense. What are the best lines that I can take in the end game? This is really the only time of the game when that sort of thing is possible.
So here's a question for you, Will. We have this concept of you're tracking tiles, and it's the onus of the player to get it right. Do you think that as Scrabble gets a little more technologically advanced, do you feel that that's something that should continue? Do you think that there's a universe where things like tracking and scorekeeping should just be taken care of? I feel like that's an element that's kind of missing in something like chess, where you don't have these games where someone like, oops, I forgot there was a G left. Like, it's like, oops, I forgot there was a queen on the board.
Yeah, I feel like the equivalent of that in online chess, and you can see the fist bump for the two players as Walker comes away with a pretty big upset over Dave Wiegand in round one. I think the equivalent of that in online play is like in chess, you literally are forbidden from making a move that puts you in check or something, right? Yeah. So like I guess theoretically over the board in chess, you could make a move like that and be penalized for it. So they're similar. I mean, there are some similarities. For me personally, I definitely think that sort of bookkeeping is something I would love to be off, to be offloaded or outsourced.
Yeah.
And I just believe that actually knowing what to do with that bookkeeping, that's Scrabble, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
tracking the tiles, that's bookkeeping. That's busy work.
Yeah.
So I know there are many that disagree with that, but that's kind of my stance. And I think I would just as soon have more time to interpret what do I do with these unseen tiles and how do I approach this information as opposed to doing busy work to get to that point. So that's my personal bias. Does that jive with your opinion as
Oh,
well?
yeah, 100%. I know that Dave and I are the same way, in which neither of us usually track tiles for the first few turns. Say, like, we'll just wait for, because we both tend to play pretty fast, which you wouldn't know if this was the only time you'd seen Dave play. He usually has 10 plus minutes left on his clock. He just waits for a turn where he gets some tiles, he knows what he's going to do, and his opponent's taken some time, and he just tracks the whole game.
That's
And
amazing. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
and I do the
definitely
same thing. Like,
I'm a
it's
turn
just,
by turn guy for sure.
yeah,
So that's pretty amazing.
yeah. It's just
So
it's less context switching, right? Like it's crap. I was thinking about something. My opponent made a play. Now I need to go write the score down and track some tiles. Like I'd rather just keep looking.
yeah. So it sounds like we agree. If anybody out there is a defender of the status quo and the bookkeeping element of over the board play, feel free. We're not gonna bite your head off if you want to argue your case in the chat. So yeah, so a very interesting first game. John Tomato says, "I don't like change." Yeah, nor do many of us. It's hard. You need a really good reason to make big changes a lot of the time, especially if you've been doing things and are comfortable with things that as they have been. But sometimes you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet.